crack team recovers thousands of artworks stolen by the Nazis during World War II. Almost 80 years ago, World War II was starting to take place. Little by little, soldiers from different parts of the globe started to get ready to fight against Hitler's Nazi regime. It was clear that the battle against the leader of the Nazi Party was going to end up costing the lives of literally millions of innocent people. It was going to be difficult to defeat the army, and yet Allied soldiers did everything in their power to prevent such a despicable person such as Hitler from winning the war. Nevertheless, the leader of the Nazi Party managed to inflict terror and commit hundreds of unspeakable crimes during his time. Of course, the most horrifying of all, slaughter. While the carnage of World War II was taking place across Western Europe, another quieter crime was being committed someplace else. Hitler and his men were looting priceless works of art, hoping they could use them to open up a new museum. Hitler's mad mind drove him to want to open different museums after winning the war, all to laud himself for defeating his enemies. His desire to accomplish such a thing was so big that he ordered the collection of 200,000 Jewish artifacts, which were photographed and cataloged to be displayed at the end of the war as a trophy case of archaeological remains. It was to be called the Museum of an Extinct Race. Happily, the despicable Nazi leader did not win the war, and thus his plans were ruined. But let's get back to the main point, shall we? As Germany's power began to wane, the paintings and sculptures stolen by Hitler and his men were in danger of disappearing forever. That was, of course, until a likely band of heroes stepped in. As a teenager in Austria, Adolf Hitler left his home in the city of Linz and traveled east to Vienna in the hopes of studying art. However, the city's prestigious academy decided to reject his application not once, but on 2 separate occasions. Still, the soon-to-become leader of the Nazi Party never lost his passion for the art. So 3 decades later, when he led Germany into one of the bloodiest wars the world has ever seen, he put his eye on the cultural heritage of the continent. Over the course of the war, Hitler oversaw the systematic removal of countless works of art from collections across Europe, including those held in private homes, universities, and religious buildings. Little by little, the Führer started to amass a staggering catalog of drawings, paintings, sculptures, and more. It almost seemed like he was punishing people by taking their art pieces, just because he was not accepted in Vienna's Academy of Art 3 decades in the past. During his time, the Nazis acquired works by Picasso, Rembrandt, Michelangelo, and many others. But make no mistake, Hitler was not looking to steal the art pieces for himself. He was rather trying to arm a collection that he could later exhibit in a museum of his own. In fact, back in 1938, 1 year before World War II started, Hitler began planning the building of a great museum that would have been located in his hometown of Linz. His purpose? To display all the finest art from across Europe, putting Nazi Germany firmly on the cultural map. Of course, to achieve this, he would need art, a lot of art. But since buying it legally was not an option, Hitler took advantage of the war to steal as much artwork as he could. Meanwhile, in the Allied countries, the concern for the fragile cultural treasures caught up in the violence of war began to grow. Sadly, there was nothing that could be done, until 1943, that is. 2 years before World War II came to an end, the government established an official program to protect valuable artifacts from further destruction. At first, the members of this program, who had acquired the name the Monument Men, were in charge of preventing cultural property from being destroyed as collateral damage during Allied bombing raids. However, as the war began to draw to a close, their remit shifted to include the recovery of stolen art, and so the Monument Men put their hands to work. The team included both men and women from across 14 different countries. Each and every single one of them determined to prevent Europe's cultural treasures from remaining in the clutches of the Third Reich. The magnificent team did such a good job that just 1 year after the program's foundation, they had already recovered 345 individuals. But here's the thing, All members of this program were far from soldiers. In fact, most of them had never expected to have any involvement in the war. Instead, the monument men were artists themselves. Some were museum directors, historians, curators, and even archivists. But that's not all. Many of them were also approaching middle age, so one could think they did not represent any threat for Hitler and his men. Wrong. The Monuments Men were so in love with art that when they volunteered to join the government program, they told themselves they would do the impossible to prevent Hitler from getting his way. Sadly, some of these brave people died trying to retrieve looted works of art. But despite all of this, they continued with their mission. In March 1945, Monuments men Robert Posey and Lincoln Kirstein were in the German city of Trier, where they heard a fascinating confession. A man they met told them the location of Hermann Göring's art stash. Göring was a German political and military leader, as well as one of the most powerful figures in the Nazi Party. So, you can understand retrieving stolen art by this man was a big deal. But this doesn't end there. The same man who revealed the location of Göring's art stash also went on to reveal the location of another cache. This one way more important: Hitler's art stash. 2 months later, both Monuments men arrived at Altusee, a salt mine that had been in operation for thousands of years. Inside, there was the biggest treasure any art lover would have loved to have. Posey and Kirstein literally found thousands of art pieces hidden in there. Within days, they recovered works by Johannes Vermeer, Michelangelo, Picasso, and many others. But it wasn't until May 1945 that the Monuments men could coordinate the removal of the mine's massive stash of priceless art. Amazingly, there were more than 6,500 paintings, as well as a vast collection of drawings, sculptures, tapestries, books, and furniture, all saved by the braveness of these men. But all this would not be known today if it weren't for the work of Lynn H. Nicholas, an author who in 1995 wrote a book called The Rape of Europa, a literary piece that detailed the painstaking search for the stolen art. The Book of Mention later inspired Hollywood actor and director George Clooney to work on the 2014 blockbuster movie The Monuments Men.